You are drowning and you do not even know it yet. The average American family now pays over $27,000 a year just to stay insured. Not treated. Not healed. Just insured. Meanwhile, the average American worker gets 0 guaranteed paid vacation days by federal law. It's 0. And 1 in 4 American women return to work within 2 weeks of giving birth, not because they want to, but because they financially have no other option. Now here is the question that should be keeping every working American up at night. What if everything you were told about wealth, work, and the American dream was built on a foundation that another country already solved decades ago? That country has 5.6 million people. It is closing in on a $2 trillion wall of saved national wealth. And by 2030, it is on a trajectory to become the most powerful small nation the modern world has ever seen. The country is Norway. And the story of how it got there will fundamentally challenge what you believe is possible for your own life. But here is the question I want you to hold in your mind for the entire length of this video. Norway built its power on oil, a resource the world is rapidly moving away from. So how does a nation that owes its fortune to fossil fuels become a global powerhouse in a post-fossil fuel world? That answer comes at the very end of this video, and when it lands, it will completely reframe everything you see between now and then. Let us get into the 10 reasons. Reason 1. The vault that prints money. Norway sits on a sovereign wealth fund worth $1.81 trillion and rising, closing in fast on the $2 trillion milestone. For a country with fewer people than the state of Wisconsin, those numbers belong in a different universe. That fund, known as the Government Pension Fund Global, is the single largest sovereign wealth fund on the entire planet. In 2024 alone, it posted a profit of $213 billion in a single calendar year. To put that into human terms, every Norwegian citizen, every man, woman, and child, has approximately $340,000 sitting in that fund on their behalf right now. Now compare that to the American reality. The average American household has less than $8,000 in savings. While Norway was stacking generational wealth into a national safety net, the average American was one missed paycheck away from a financial crisis. This is not just about money. This is about what money buys at a national level, and Norway is about to spend that advantage like a weapon. Reason 2. The healthcare math nobody wants to show you. In the most recent national health expenditure projections, the United States now spends $15,632 per person on healthcare annually. That is the highest per capita healthcare expenditure of any country on the planet. And what did Americans get for that price? The United States ranked dead last in healthcare outcomes among 11 comparable high-income nations, according to a major international health systems report. Norway spends roughly half that per capita and covers every single citizen from birth to death. No deductibles. No network battles. No bankruptcies caused by a cancer diagnosis. The real cost comparison is not just dollar figures. It is the invisible tax that medical anxiety places on every working American's mental health, career decisions, and willingness to take entrepreneurial risk. In Norway, you can quit your job and start a company without losing your family's health coverage. That structural freedom produces innovation in a way that no amount of startup capital can replicate. Reason 3. The education dividend. American student loan debt has now surpassed $1.74 trillion. $1,700 billion. Owed by people who were told that education was the path out of poverty. In Norway, university education has historically been tuition-free for Norwegian citizens, and while recent policy shifts have introduced some changes for non-EU international students, the core principle governing Norwegian citizens has not changed. Norwegians do not graduate into debt slavery. The median Norwegian student enters the workforce with their full earning potential intact, unencumbered by loan repayments that force them into careers they resent simply to stay solvent. This is not a socialist fairy tale. This is compounded human capital, and by 2030, Norway will have an entire workforce generation who never had to choose between passion and financial survival when picking their career path. Reason 4. The parental leave equation. The United States is the only, let that sink in, the only developed nation among 41 comparable countries that does not mandate a single day of paid parental leave at the federal level. Not one day. In Norway, parents receive 49 weeks of parental leave paid at 100% of their salary. Alternatively, they can take 59 weeks at 80% pay. 15 weeks are reserved specifically for each parent, encouraging both mothers and fathers to participate equally in early child rearing. The downstream effects of this policy are profound. Norwegian children enter school with better developmental outcomes. Norwegian women do not face the career penalty cliff that forces 1 in 4 American mothers back to work within 2 weeks of giving birth. Norwegian fathers are present. This is not just a quality of life statistic. This is a compounding national investment in the human capital of every future Norwegian citizen, and it pays dividends for generations. Here is where I want to hear from you directly. Norway gives 49 weeks of fully paid parental leave. If the United States introduced even 12 weeks of federally guaranteed paid parental leave tomorrow, would it change how you planned your family, your career, or your finances? Drop your specific answer in the comments, and tell me whether your employer currently offers paid leave or not, because the gap between corporate policy and lived reality in America is staggering, and I want to map it in the comments section. Reason 5. The rest you are not getting. There is no federal law in the United States requiring employers to give workers a single paid vacation day. None. The average American worker receives around 10 days of paid time off per year, and studies consistently show they do not even take all of them. In Norway, the law guarantees every full-time employee a minimum of 25 paid vacation days per year. That is 5 full weeks. And Norwegian culture enforces it. Companies are legally required to ensure workers actually use their leave. The hidden cost of this difference is not just stress. The lack of structured rest is directly correlated with higher rates of cardiovascular disease, burnout, depression, and cognitive decline in the American workforce. Norway is not giving workers vacation because it is generous. Norway is protecting its most valuable economic asset, the productive capacity of its human beings. Before we go further, if you are finding this data as genuinely unsettling as I did the first time I ran these numbers, this channel, Nexora, is entirely dedicated to finding these hidden gaps between the American reality and what is actually possible elsewhere. Every video we put out is built on primary data, not political opinion. If that kind of research matters to you, joining this channel right now means you will never miss the next comparison. We are not here to tell you where to live. We are here to show you what the data actually says about how to live better, wherever you are. Reason 6, the safety premium. Norway's crime index sits at 33.2. The United States crime index sits at 49.2. That gap carries an enormous economic cost that rarely enters public conversation. American households spend billions annually on private security, alarm systems, gated communities, and personal firearms specifically because they do not feel safe in their own neighborhoods. Norwegian children walk to school independently. Norwegian citizens do not structure their housing choices around fear of violent crime. The murder rate comparison is not subtle. The United States records nearly 450 times more murders per year than Norway. This is not a moral indictment. It is a resource allocation problem. Every dollar an American spends on personal security infrastructure is a dollar that does not go into savings, investment, education, or health. Norway redirected those dollars decades ago. Reason 7. The happiness economy. The 2025 World Happiness Report placed Norway 7th globally. The United States landed at 23rd overall, and that top-line number actually hides the most alarming data point in this entire video. For Americans under the age of 30, the United States ranks 62nd in the world for happiness. Not 23rd, 62nd. An entire generation of young Americans is reporting a quality of life experience that does not even crack the top 60 countries on the planet. Now here is why this matters economically. Happiness is not a soft metric. Happier populations are more productive, more innovative, less likely to abuse substances, less likely to require expensive mental health interventions, and more likely to trust institutions and invest in civic infrastructure. The happiness gap between Norway and the United States represents a massive invisible drain on American economic potential. And the trend lines are moving in opposite directions. Norway is rising. The generation that will carry America's economy forward is falling further behind than any top-line statistic reveals. Reason 8. The energy pivot that changes everything. Now we arrive at the answer to the open-loop question I posed at the beginning of this video. Norway built its wealth on oil, but here is what makes it genuinely different from every other petrostate in history. Norway decided to use oil money to fund its escape from oil dependency. By 2026, the petrol car has effectively become a museum piece in Norway. Over 94% of all new vehicles hitting Norwegian roads are fully electric. They did not just meet their 2025 goal of ending internal combustion engine sales, they crushed it ahead of schedule. Oslo has electrified its public transit system. The sovereign wealth fund itself has been progressively divesting from fossil fuel companies for years. While Saudi Arabia and Russia remain trapped in resource dependency, Norway used the oil era as a launchpad into a post-oil future. That is the strategic move that elevates this conversation from history to prophecy. By 2030, when the global energy transition is no longer a debate but a market reality, Norway will be one of the few nations that made it through that transition with its finances intact, its infrastructure modernized, and its population prepared. Think about the city or town you live in right now. If your local government announced tomorrow that it was implementing a full electric public transit system using a dedicated infrastructure fund, completely free at point of use, would that change your daily commute, your car ownership, or your monthly budget? Tell me in the comments with the name of your city and your honest calculation of how much you spend on car-related expenses every single month. The numbers people are sharing on this topic across the internet are genuinely shocking, and I want to see your specific math. Reason 9. The retirement reality check. The most recent Natixis Global Retirement Index named Norway the #1 country in the world to retire in. The United States does not crack the top 10. The American retirement system places the burden of investment sophistication on individuals through instruments like 401k plans, meaning your retirement security depends on your personal financial literacy, your employer's generosity, and the performance of markets you cannot control. In Norway, a mandatory occupational pension system supplements the state pension, and the sovereign wealth fund functions as a societal backstop for the entire population. The practical result is that Norwegian retirees do not run out of money. They do not have to choose between medication and groceries at 72. They do not have to re-enter the workforce at 68 because their 401k underperformed. That security does not just benefit the elderly, it removes an enormous psychological burden from every working-age Norwegian who knows with certainty what their future looks like. Reason 10. The GDP per capita crossover. Let us put the latest economic numbers directly on the table. Norway's nominal GDP per capita now stands at approximately $102,400. The United States registers approximately $86,200. That is a gap of over $16,000 per person in Norway's favor, and the direction of that trajectory is accelerating, not converging. Now, to be precise in the way this channel demands, critics will correctly point out that the United States still maintains a lead when measuring GDP through purchasing power parity, which adjusts for the fact that everyday goods, rent, and services cost significantly more inside Norway than inside the United States. That is a real and valid nuance, and we are not going to hide from it. But here is what PPP does not capture. It does not account for the 49 weeks of paid parental leave, the universal healthcare coverage with no out-of-pocket exposure, the tuition-free university system, or the 5 weeks of mandated paid vacation that every Norwegian worker receives as part of their effective compensation package. When you add those structural benefits back into the real income calculation, the purchasing power argument collapses entirely. The average Norwegian is not just earning more in nominal terms. They are structurally shielded from the largest financial catastrophes that quietly devastate American households year after year. Now let us address the thing you are thinking because I know it is sitting there. The argument goes, Norway is rich because of oil, and that is a one-time lucky circumstance that has nothing to do with policy or governance. This is the most common misconception about the Norwegian model, and the data destroys it completely. Dozens of oil-rich nations have extracted comparable natural resources and produced nothing but inequality, corruption, and instability. Nigeria, Venezuela, and Angola. The resource itself is not the differentiator. The decision that actually saved Norway has a specific name. It is called the handlingsregelen, the fiscal rule, and it works like this. Norway restricts government spending from the fund to no more than 3% of the total fund value per year. That single self-imposed constraint prevented Norwegian politicians from simply spending the oil windfall on short-term popularity. The wealth was preserved, compounded, and reinvested in a globally diversified portfolio instead of being consumed the moment it arrived. Combined with the decision to keep oil revenue entirely separate from the operating government budget, a structure established deliberately in 1990, the handlingsregelen is the actual mechanism behind everything you have seen in this video. It was not geography. It was not luck. It was one rule, consistently enforced, for over 3 decades. And that distinction matters enormously because it means the Norwegian model is replicable, even if the starting conditions are different. The wealth is a product of decisions, not destiny. If you just felt something shift reading that last section, that moment where it stops being about Norway and starts being about the question of what your own country could choose to do differently, then you are exactly the person this channel exists for. Nexora is not a travel channel. It is not a political channel. It is a research journey into the question of what a good life actually costs and what systems make it possible. Every person who subscribes to this channel is joining a community that refuses to accept the default settings. I will personally be in the comments for the first 2 hours after this video drops to answer your specific questions about the data, the sources, and the math. Come find me there. And hit subscribe so the next piece of this research lands directly in your feed. By 2030, Norway will have solidified its position as the most powerful small nation in the modern world, not through military force, not through geographic advantage, but through the compounding results of 70 years of deliberate, data-driven social and economic policy. A sovereign wealth fund closing in on $2 trillion, generating more annual income than its own oil sector. A healthcare system that spends roughly half what America spends per capita and produces universally better outcomes. An educated workforce entering their careers without the anchor of $1.74 trillion in collective student debt. A parental leave system that invests in human capital before a child ever enters a classroom. A crime rate that allows citizens to redirect security spending into productive investment. A happiness infrastructure that makes workers more productive, even as the generation carrying America's future ranks 62nd in the world for quality of life experience. An energy transition that turned fossil fuel dependency into green economic leadership, with over 94% of new vehicles now fully electric. A retirement system anchored in security rather than market speculation. And a nominal GDP per capita that now surpasses the United States by over $16,000, a gap that widens further when every structural social benefit is factored into real compensation. Norway will be the most powerful small nation by 2030 because it chose to be, and that choice started with one rule, 3%, and the decision to treat its people as its most important asset. The question this channel will keep asking is simple: what is stopping anywhere else from making the same choice? If this video landed for you, the next video in our Norway vs. USA series goes even deeper into the hidden math, specifically the real hourly compensation gap between a Norwegian worker and an American worker when you account for all societal benefits. The number is going to genuinely upset you. It is linked right here, and I will see you in that one next. Here is today's question, and I want a real answer. Would you give up the possibility of becoming a self-made millionaire in exchange for a guaranteed, fully funded, stress-free life, where your healthcare, your retirement, your children's education, and your annual rest are entirely secured by the system you pay into? Yes or no, and tell me what you would actually miss. The comments section is open, and I will personally respond to the most thought-provoking answers in the first 2 hours after this drops.